Welcome back to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in Washington, and joining us again from London is Mohammed Jannad, and we're talking about the Pashtun Nation. So, Mohammed, talk about the recent suicide bombing that killed the CIA officers in Afghanistan, and what does it tell us about the relationship of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda?
There is a video evidence now, so we can, assume that it was Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan rather than Mullah Omar's Taliban, who arranged the attack. One version of things, which is emerging is that all these are together. The TTP or Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan was used as a base. Al-Balawi, who was the suicide bomber who carried out the attack, was the person who did it, who is more Al-Qaeda, or who was in Al-Qaeda, surely. This is what the reports say. The Haqqani network gave him logistic support, which is the part of Taliban. This is one version of things. Another version is that there is no involvement of Mullah Omar Taliban in this. The TTP is very much in hands with Al-Qaeda, who has this agenda, extremist agenda, of killing anyone who is supporting NATO and America, or killing or taking money from them. So these two versions are available, right now. I think the Pakistani army and the Pakistani people will prefer to say that this was Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan plus the Al-Qaeda, where Al-Balawi comes from. The American version or the NATO version will be more in favor of adding the third dimension of Haqqani network to it, because it is in their favor to take out Haqqani, and they would like Pakistani forces to take out Haqqani. So this has devastated them, but the effect in the last 1 week has been that there has been no day without a drone attack. Today, 2 drone attacks happened, and I think 2 days ago there were 2 drone attacks. Yesterday there was 1. So almost every day now there is a drone attack.
So talk about the effects of the drone attacks on the psychology of the Pashtuns.
Al-Qaeda is very successful because of drone attacks in telling Pashtuns that America is attacking you, and Pakistan Army and ISI and the Pakistani people even are helping America to arrange these attacks. That actually makes many tribes, many Pashtun tribes, go against the Pakistani army. So a civil war can, start from that. And actually there is a civil war in many places. And if you look at Peshawar, there was a civil war, because every morning when you wake up, you would hear news of a bombing. So that kind of situation happened because of the drone attacks. In fact, at one time, it is reported that President Musharraf told the American army to mark these drones as Pakistani drones, so that he can separate the local tribes from Al-Qaeda and TTP. But America did not do that. They put this request down, and these drone attacks simply are making Al-Qaeda make this logic out of the situation.
We've read many accounts of the Afghan Taliban and Al-Qaeda executing, assassinating tribal leaders who are opposing them. We've heard stories that certainly after the overthrow of the Taliban, a lot of the tribal leaders throughout the Pashtun nation, throughout Afghanistan as a whole, were ready and kind of open to see if there'd be any actual reconstruction. To what extent now, 8 years later, is the Taliban emerging as a real voice of Pashtun nationalism, or is it more complicated than that?
These are all reactions to each other. If you look at it deeper, you will see all these people reacting to each other. Taliban came up as a reaction. I mean, Pashtuns became, extremist, and Taliban, they became Taliban because of the communist regime in Afghanistan when the Russians came. They came into power because of, the civil war in Afghanistan after the communists went away. America, came here and, dethroned Taliban. Now, why are Taliban, gaining ground? Only because America is depending too much on warlordism. That is, the most detrimental part, because these people are unable to implement what America wants or what American version of development is. And they, implement their own will on the people.
So if I understand it correctly, it's the U.S. strategy after 9/11, which was an alliance with the old warlords, brought all the old warlords back to power again, built around Karzai. In a sense, they recreated the conditions that gave birth to the Taliban in the first place.
No doubt. I think, it is like this. If they had, mixed this strategy with something else, maybe giving them power, drawing them out, and giving power to real people, that would have, I think that would have melted away, the Taliban. Taliban would not have been there. In fact, if you look at, why Taliban came into power was because of peace and, because there was no peace. There was a civil war and the warlords were pushing their own agenda. In the same conditions are coming in again.
Let's cross to the other side of the border. Let's talk about what's happening on the Pakistani side. The Pakistan Army had a campaign in the Swat Valley, then they had in South Waziristan, and now there's something going on in North Waziristan, but there's not a heck of a lot of news coming out. So what is going on in North Waziristan, and what has been the effect on the Pashtuns as a result of this Pakistani campaigns?
Well, this has, several dimensions. If you look at, the SWAT problem was, has a very different aura to it. It is a long struggle by a person called Sufi Muhammad there, who wanted to have Sharia law in SWAT, which was there before 1970s, when SWAT was an independent state and came into Pakistan after that. So that is Mullah Fazlullah. Who is actually the son-in-law of Sufi Muhammad, and well, he got help from Taliban in Waziristan, and then one day Pakistani army had to go after him. That's a very different story. Swat is one of the very civilized society, one of the happier society of Pashtuns, and it's a very beautiful place. And if you come to the other side, to Waziristan, it's a different place. It's underdeveloped. It's rocky. It's very tough. It's a very tough area, and the people are very tough, but they're really underdeveloped. Now in South Waziristan, mainly the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP, of Baitullah Masood had taken the grounds, and they were having their own training camps. If you look at North Waziristan, it was more taken by the Taliban, who have sort of joined hands with Pakistani army. I would say is Mullah Nazir, and there is Jalaluddin Haqqani network. So these people, they do fight against the America, but they do not fight with the Pakistani army. So these are the two parts. And Pakistani army has gone into South Waziristan. They won the SWAT, you would say, rather easily. South Waziristan is not that easy, and they have taken the main routes. They have very successfully, and they have lost many soldiers, and it needed, a lot of jihadi emotion, in the Pakistani army to do that, because it was not easy to go against Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. They were also Muslims then. But anyhow, they've successfully taken South Waziristan.
And what's going on in North Waziristan? Because that was supposed to be the critical battle.
Now that is, a critical battle. That's a big chunk of Waziristan. It has many fighters who have a very strong link to Afghanistan, and they are much more dangerous. I think, personally, it seems like they will be much more difficult to tackle. Now, Pakistani army cannot actually overstretch. This is one of the biggest problems. If you look at the other border of Pakistan, the eastern border with India, that also needs a lot of Pakistani army to be deployed all the time. So Pakistani army, I think, cannot stretch in North Waziristan in the first place. This is the first problem. And however, there may be more to it, because Pakistan feels insecure if the current regime continues in Kabul and in Afghanistan in the way it is, because they think that the Northern Alliance and those people who are with Karzai will harm Pakistan. So they need a defense line as well here, in a form of militia. But I think, the first point is Pakistani army do not have the resources to keep South Waziristan, to keep the eastern border, to keep Swat as well, because many of them are deployed in Swat.
So they really are not going to be able to take the Taliban stronghold in North Waziristan. So in the next segment of our interview, let's conclude with one question, which is, will or are the Pashtuns as a nation going to rise up in a full-scale national insurgency against the American NATO occupation or not? Please join us for the next segment of our interview with Mohammed Jannat.